Part 1. The Man in the Window. Every morning at 6:55 a.m., Ruthie Mills saw him. The man in apartment 4B sat in his window with a cup of something steaming, always in the same chair, always in the same robe. Gray, corduroy, a bit threadbare at the sleeves. His name was Mr. Clarence Avery, but the building called him the Clock, because you could set your watch by his window routine. Ruthie was 34, ran a small pet care business out of her apartment, and had lived in the building for nearly 2 years. They'd never spoken beyond the occasional elevator nod, but she'd come to look for that window silhouette every morning, especially after losing her father last year. Something about the man's quiet consistency felt safe. Clarence himself was 79, widowed, no pets, no children, no living siblings. He spent most of his days with books, jazz records, and a heavily modified email interface that loaded the same message at the same time every day. Final Guardian check-in. "Are you still with us, Mr. Avery?" He clicked yes. Then he moved on with his day. Clarence didn't fear dying. He feared being forgotten, or worse, misunderstood. He had lived a life built on discretion. First as a Cold War-era translator for the State Department, then as a corporate security advisor. His name had never been in the news. His work never made it to resumes. What he knew died with him. Or rather, it would have, unless something triggered the fail-safe. Final Guardian held one message for Clarence, just one, and it was a doozy. The email was addressed to Joanna, a woman nearly 40 years his junior. He'd only met her once. She didn't know who he really was, or why he'd followed her life quietly from a distance for decades. She didn't know. He was her father. Part 2. A Life in Drafts. Clarence Avery didn't believe in nostalgia. The past to him was like a passport, useful for proving where you'd been, but not something you flashed around to strangers. His walls were bare, his furniture was sparse. No old medals, no family portraits, no dusty diplomas. But tucked away in a single encrypted file on his laptop was a document labeled, "To Joanna, only if I'm gone." It had taken him 6 years to write. The facts were complicated. In 1979, while stationed under diplomatic cover in Istanbul, Clarence met a translator named Zeynep. She was brilliant, fierce, and had a laugh like crushed ice in a glass. They spent 3 reckless months together before Clarence was reassigned, and just like that, she was gone. Years later, while scanning declassified personnel files in D.C., Clarence found her name again. Only this time, she was listed on a private immigration petition. The name beneath hers, Joanna C. Sari. Clarence didn't need a paternity test. He remembered the timing, remembered her teary eyes the last night they'd shared. She never told him, likely never intended to. But there she was, growing up in Oregon, doing well in school, eventually becoming a civil rights attorney, and now living in New York, less than 30 blocks from him. He'd never reached out. He told himself it was because she had a full life, that he'd missed his chance, that she deserved better than a ghost parachuting in to disrupt her adulthood with decades-late fatherhood. But really, it was fear. Fear she'd resent him. Fear she'd say, "You had your chance." So he wrote the letter. Final Guardian gave him control, not just over what he said, but when. He'd set it up so that if he failed to respond to check-ins for 10 consecutive days, the message would be delivered, not by a person, not through a lawyer, Just a quiet email already composed, waiting in the wings. Joanna, I don't know if you'll want to read this. I won't blame you if you don't, but I've watched your life unfold from a careful distance, not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much and too late. I never had the courage to reach out, but you deserve the truth. He detailed their connection, shared memories of her mother, apologized, explained without excuse, and in closing he wrote, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just don't want to leave this world with a silence where there could have been a sentence, even if it's one you never read. He didn't expect a reply, just clarity. And he added a small note at the bottom. If you ever want to know more, ask your mother about Istanbul. 1979. There was a man in a silk scarf. That was me. Part 3. Silence by Choice. Clarence saw the final Guardian check-in email that morning, just like every morning. Subject: Are you still with us, Mr. Avery? He hovered over the yes button. Normally, he'd click it without hesitation. He appreciated the simplicity, a single word typed, a small confirmation, a digital heartbeat. But today, he didn't click it. Not because he couldn't, because he chose not to. He closed the laptop and stared out the window. The tea in his cup had already gone cold. He didn't feel sad. He felt clear. He had lived a life of deferrals, delaying honesty, delaying connection. Final Guardian had given him the comfort of planning. Now it gave him the dignity of deciding. He would let the system carry the message. That evening, the reminder email came. He ignored it. The next morning, he received the second notification. Reminder: please check in today to confirm you're okay. No rush. Just reply when you're ready. He smiled at the wording. It was always polite, calm, no alarms. Final Guardian had no interest in panic, only in precision. He made himself tea, slower than usual. His hand trembled slightly as he poured, but not enough to stop him. He thought of Joanna, thought of the letter, thought of how it ended. You never owed me anything. I don't expect to be remembered, but I did want you to know you were never forgotten. He imagined her reading it. Would she be angry, confused? Would she delete it without finishing? Or would it sit with her quietly, the way his memory of her mother had sat with him for decades? He didn't know, and he was learning to be okay with not knowing. Ruthie noticed the absence again. 3 mornings now, and still no figure in the window. No jazz echoing softly through the brick courtyard. No robe, no steam. She stood by her kitchen sink, trying not to feel it, but she did. That quiet ache that something small and meaningful might be ending. She brought it up to Delia again. Delia grunted. Probably sleeping in. You said that yesterday. Delia looked up. All right, I'll go knock. Inside 4B, Clarence was seated in his chair reading a yellowed book of Rilke poems. He looked up when the door opened. Don't worry, he said before Delia could speak. I'm not gone. She folded her arms. Then what's with the disappearing act? Clarence smiled. Some silences are deliberate. Delia gave him a look, but didn't press further. He appreciated that. On the third evening, Clarence received the final pre-send notification. Final Guardian, we haven't received your check-in for several days. If we don't hear from you by tomorrow, your messages will be delivered as scheduled. You can cancel or reset at any time by clicking below. He didn't click. The countdown hadn't been triggered by error. He hadn't been too late. The system had done exactly what it was built to do. Wait quietly, track gently, offer control. He didn't want to reset. He wanted his words to go. He went to bed early that night, slept deeply, no dreams, just rest. Brooklyn. The next day, Joanna Sari was in her office when she opened her inbox and saw the subject line, "A message you were meant to have delivered via Final Guardian on behalf of Clarence Avery." She frowned. The name didn't register, but something about it made her click. She read slowly at first, then faster. "Joanna, if you're reading this, I've gone silent by choice, not out of neglect, but out of hope. This was the only way I knew how to reach you without demanding anything in return. Your mother, Zeynep, and I shared something brief and meaningful. I left Istanbul not knowing she was pregnant. I didn't learn of you until years later, and I never stepped forward. I didn't think I had the right. The message was long, but not overwrought. It shared memories, asked nothing, explained carefully. No drama, no apology expecting reward, just a man writing down what mattered before time took away the chance." Joanna read the final paragraph twice. "I've watched from afar, not to intrude, but to witness the life I never helped raise, and I've been proud of your work, your voice, your courage. You don't need to respond. You don't even need to forgive. I only ask that you know." She sat still for a long time. Then she searched the return address. Vinton Arms, Brooklyn, 3 stops away. She didn't know if she wanted to knock, but she knew she wanted to see. Part 4. A voice, not an echo. Clarence was listening to jazz when the knock came. He had just brewed a fresh pot of tea. Weak by his old standards, but warm. He didn't rush to the door. He never did any more. His joints negotiated each step on their own terms. When he opened it, she was there. Joanna, older now than he remembered her mother being, wearing a dark coat, eyes sharper than he expected, same jawline, same way of standing, like the world needed her to lean into it. "Mr. Avery?" she asked. He nodded. "Clarence, please." She stood still for a moment, then stepped into the apartment. It was quiet inside, except for the soft saxophone in the background. No dramatic lighting, no stacks of letters, just a small home lived in carefully. "I received your message," she said. "I know. You meant for it to be the last thing." He nodded. "Not because I wanted it to be, just didn't think I'd get the chance to say anything else." She looked around. "You've been here how long?" 8 years. "And you knew I lived nearby?" "I did." "And you never reached out?" Clarence took a long breath. "No." "Why?" "Because I didn't want to interrupt your life, and because the last time I rushed into something, it cost me everything I wasn't ready to lose." Joanna looked down at her hands. "I read it twice," she said. "Your message, once in shock, once slower. I didn't know what to feel." "I don't expect you to feel anything in particular." "That's the problem," she said. "I felt everything." He sat down, gestured to the armchair across from him. "Would you like tea?" She nodded. They sat in silence for a few minutes, the kind that holds weight rather than awkwardness. "I asked my mother," Joanna finally said, "about Istanbul. She didn't lie, just omitted. Said she thought it was simpler that way. I think she never wanted to explain why you disappeared." "I didn't know she was pregnant," Clarence said quietly. "By the time I did, she was gone. I found her years later, already moved on. You were in school. You had a life. You could have written, called, something. I wrote that letter instead." Joanna set her teacup down. "And now that I'm here?" Clarence looked at her carefully. I won't ask you for anything. I didn't come here because you asked." He raised an eyebrow. "Then why did you?" She thought for a moment. "Because reading your message wasn't enough. I wanted to look you in her eye and know it was real." Clarence nodded. "Fair. And," she added, "because if I were in your position, I think I'd want to know whether the message was received." "It was," he said. "You're here." She smiled faintly. Another long pause. "I should be angry," she said. "Are you?" "I don't know, but I'm not leaving." That surprised him. "You don't want to run out the door and process it in private?" "I already did," she said. "On the train here, on the sidewalk out front, in the hallway before I knocked. And then I realized, this moment, it only happens once." Clarence's eyes softened. "What do you want from it?" "A second conversation." He laughed, quiet, relieved. "I can do that," he said. 2 weeks later, Joanna came every Sunday. Sometimes they walked, sometimes they didn't speak. Once they sat in the park and fed birds from a shared bag of sunflower seeds. She asked about his past, at first professionally, like a journalist or a lawyer, then more casually. He answered as best he could. She told him about her clients, her mother, her fears. He listened better than anyone ever had. 6 months later, Clarence passed away in his sleep. His final Guardian account remained active until the end. He checked in every day. His message to Joanna was never resent. It didn't need to be. He had already been heard. When Joanna sorted through his apartment with Delia's help, she found almost nothing in terms of possessions. Just a single envelope on the desk, addressed in careful handwriting. "Joanna, open any time," or not at all. Inside was a simple line, "Thank you for turning the end of my life into a beginning." Epilogue. Joanna kept the final Guardian email, not out of guilt, but because it marked a moment, the last time someone chose honesty before disappearance. She spoke about it once at a conference on ethical technology and end-of-life planning. "We use tech for convenience," she said, "but sometimes it gives us something bigger, one more chance to say the thing we never dared to say while we were alive." The slide behind her showed no photo, no name, just the words, "You don't need to forgive me. I just want you to know." She closed the talk with this. His silence wasn't a void. It was a choice, but so was the reply. That's the power of being given a chance, even one you never expected. You just heard a story about a message that only gets sent if you stop checking in. That's exactly what IamCanary.com lets you do. Write a message. Choose who gets it. If you ever stop checking in, your message is delivered automatically. No glitches, no guesswork. No one reads it until it matters. If you have something important to say it with IamCanary.com. Start now. Link in the description.